Hey, name's Miles. I'm 25 now. Grew up out in Indiana, but I made the move to Austin a few months back. Right now, I'm in that awkward limbo between apartments, bouncing around doing freelance video editing gigs. Nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills, or it would, if I had an actual place to live. Austin's gotten crazy expensive lately, so until I can swing something affordable, I've been crashing wherever I can. That's how I ended up staying with Jake. We got connected through one of my clients. He's a chill guy, 24, studying architecture, and plays guitar like he's on a world tour. Terrible, but with heart. We weren't exactly tight, more like new friends who clicked right away. When I told him I was stuck between places, he just shrugged and said, "Crash here for a bit. My mom won't mind." And that was it, just supposed to be a few nights. That first evening went smooth. Jake introduced me to his mom, Jake. She looked younger than I expected, early 40s, maybe even late 30s if you caught her in the right light. Slim, confident, and one of those women who really sees you when she talks. She welcomed me like family, offered me a plate, and joked that I looked too old to be hanging with her son. We ate, watched a movie, chatted about my editing work a bit. She asked a lot, but it didn't feel invasive. More like she was just genuinely interested. That night, I crashed on the couch feeling oddly grateful. It's rare to walk into someone's home and instantly feel at ease. But the next morning, something was different. I was up early, maybe around 6:45. The house was quiet. I shuffled into the kitchen for a glass of water, still half asleep. And there she was. Jake, standing by the sink, barefoot, her hair damp like she'd just stepped out of the shower. She had on this smooth, dark green robe, loosely tied. It wasn't exactly indecent, but it left just enough to keep your imagination busy. She turned slightly, gave me a soft smile, and said, "Morning," while reaching for a coffee mug. "Morning," I replied, trying to sound more awake, and absolutely trying not to stare. She poured her coffee and leaned against the counter. "Sleep all right?" she asked. "Yeah, the couch was surprisingly comfy," I said. I opened the fridge mostly to give my eyes somewhere safe to go. My chest was thumping a little faster than normal. When I glanced back, she was watching me, not in a weird way, just calm, focused. Then she tilted her head and asked, "Do you always look at me like that?" I froze. She said it with a light smile, but her eyes weren't joking. She didn't laugh, didn't look away. I could feel the heat rush up my neck. I hadn't meant to stare. She sipped her coffee, eyes still on me. Never said she minded, either. I just stood there, caught off guard, not sure what to do. Right then, Jake strolled in yawning. "Yo, coffee?" he grumbled, rubbing his eyes. And boom, just like that, the moment broke. Jake turned back to her mug like nothing had happened. "Just made it," she said. I grabbed my water and sat at the table, playing it cool. But inside, I was buzzing. The rest of the day was low-key. Jake and I hung out, played a few games, went for a walk, talked about life. Jake acted totally normal. Friendly, polite, like before. But every time I looked her way, she was already looking at me. That night, laying on the couch staring at the ceiling, I couldn't stop hearing her voice. "Do you always look at me like that?" She wasn't teasing. There was something real behind it, something waiting for me to say something back. And I didn't. Next morning, Jake had an early class. He left around 8:15, tossed his keys on the counter, said he'd be back around lunch. So I was alone. Mostly. I sat on the couch, laptop open, half editing a wedding video for a client back in Columbus, half scrolling TikTok. My brain wasn't in it. I kept drifting, back to the kitchen, back to Jake's voice, that moment in the morning. Around 9:30, I heard footsteps on the stairs. I looked up. It was her. Jake wore fitted black leggings and an old college hoodie. Hair up in a lazy bun, no makeup. And somehow, she looked even better. Like, effortlessly beautiful. Real. "Morning again," she said with a smirk. "Hey," I replied. She walked into the kitchen, poured coffee, and asked if I'd eaten. I hadn't. She offered to whip up some eggs and toast. I hesitated, then said yeah. We sat at the dining table, just the two of us. At first, it was light, my job, how long I'd been freelancing, if I'd ever thought about trying my luck in LA. Then her questions turned more personal. "Got someone back home?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not anymore," I said. "Used to." She gave a slow nod, like she understood. Then added, "You don't seem like the kind of guy someone leaves behind." I laughed awkward. "I'm really not that interesting." She looked straight at me. "I think you are." There was a pause. I looked away first. She let the moment pass and shifted gears, asked if I could help her move some old boxes from the garage. "Just stuff I've been meaning to donate," she said. I agreed. About 10 minutes later, we were out in the garage, facing a bunch of dusty boxes. We moved them slowly, not because they were heavy, but because the space was tight. We kept brushing past each other. Every move felt a little too close. At one point, she dropped a box full of books and bent down to grab it. I turned away out of instinct, but not before noticing the way her back curved, the quiet grace in how she moved. When she stood up, our eyes locked. "There it is again," she said, her voice low. This time, no smile. No joke. I opened my mouth, ready to say something, but nothing came out right. Everything felt either stupid or too honest. "I'm not judging," she said, stepping just a little closer. "Just curious what's on your mind." "I'm not sure I should answer that," I said, half smiling. She lifted a brow. "Why not?" "Because he's my friend," I said simply. She gave a slight nod. "Good answer." Then she reached out, brushed a little dust off my shoulder, slow, deliberate, and walked past me like it was nothing. I stood there pretending to sort through some books, but my hands were shaking. Later that afternoon, Jake came home. He wanted to show me some new designs. We hung out in the living room. Jake passed through a few times, quiet, casual. Nothing was said, but every time I saw her, I felt her eyes on me from across the room. Dinner felt off. Or maybe it was just me. She made pasta. We all sat down. Jake talked a lot, school stuff, architecture classes. Jake laughed when she was supposed to, made a few comments, but barely looked my way. And weirdly, that hit harder than I expected. After dinner, Jake asked if I wanted to go to a buddy's party. I told him I had editing to finish. He didn't push, just nodded and headed out around 9 o'clock. I went back to the couch, opened my laptop, started working again. About 15 minutes later, Jake walked through the room with a glass of red wine in her hand. "I'll be in the den if you need anything," she said, then disappeared down the hall. "Thanks," I said quietly. A few minutes ticked by. Then I heard soft jazz playing from the back of the house. I tried to keep editing. I really did. But eventually I stopped. I don't even know why. I stood, walked toward the hallway, paused, then kept going. The den door was open just a bit. She was curled up on the couch, flipping through a book. She looked up when she saw me. "Done working?" she asked. "Not exactly," I said. She tilted her head slightly. "Then what brings you back here?" I hesitated. "Just needed a break." "A break from editing?" she asked. "Or a break from pretending not to look at me?" My mouth went dry. I had no clue what to say. She smiled, calm and slow. Relax. I'm not going to bite. I let out a nervous laugh. I wasn't ready for any of this. Me neither, she said, barely above a whisper. Then she glanced down the hallway and added, In case you're wondering, he'll be out pretty late tonight. I looked at her, really looked. And then, almost like it was nothing, she murmured, You can sit down if you want. So I did. I'm not sure how long we sat there next to each other. Could have been 15 minutes, maybe more. We didn't say much. She kept pretending to read that book, and I kept pretending not to notice how close our knees kept brushing. Now and then, our legs touched, and neither of us pulled away. The jazz playing in the background was slow, warm, the kind of music that makes everything feel more alive. She took a small sip of wine, then casually handed me the glass. What a taste, she asked. I hesitated. Yeah, sure. She passed it over like it was no big deal. I took a sip, smooth and dry, then gave it back. Not bad, I said, more to keep the air from getting too still. She smiled a little. Italian wine's best when the company knows how to be quiet. I nodded, heart pounding hard enough that I was sure she could hear it over the music. I kept sneaking looks at her, the way her sweatshirt had slid off one shoulder, how the corner of her mouth curved when she caught me staring. It felt like I had wandered into someone else's story. Someone braver. Someone who didn't stop to second guess. And then, without turning her head, she said softly, You ever think about what happens when you cross a line you're not supposed to? I swallowed. Yeah. Finally, she looked at me. Think you could live with it afterward? I didn't blink. Depends, I said. On what's waiting past that line. Her eyes held mine for a beat. I could feel her reading me like a quiet book, trying to hear the part one wasn't saying out loud. Then she stood up, lifted her glass, and said gently, I should get some rest. Yeah, I said, probably smart. She stepped toward the hallway, then turned back for a second. Good night, Miles. Good night. And just like that, she disappeared up the stairs. I stayed there on the couch for a while, trying to settle my heartbeat. Eventually, I got up and went back to my room. Opened the laptop again, but didn't even touch the keyboard. Just stared at the screen, completely blank. Around midnight, I got up to hit the bathroom. As I passed the hallway, I noticed something. Her door wasn't shut all the way. A narrow strip of warm light spilled into the hall. I kept walking. But just halfway to the bathroom, I heard it, my name. Miles. Soft. Low. Like the air itself had spoken. I turned. She was standing behind the door, just barely visible through the gap. She didn't push it open. Didn't call me in. You're still awake, she said. Couldn't sleep, I answered. She nodded slowly, eyes steady. I've been thinking about earlier. Me too, I said. There was a silence. Then her voice dropped to almost nothing. Come here for a second. My legs moved before my brain could catch up. Heart pounding, I stepped up to the door. She opened it, just enough for me to slip through. Her room was dim, lit by a single lamp on the bedside table. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, wearing a loose gray t-shirt that hung down to her thighs. No makeup. No filters. Just her. Cross-legged, she held a glass of water like she needed something to anchor herself. I don't usually do this, she said, her voice barely above a breath. I'm not some restless mom chasing attention. I'm not looking to blow up your life, or mine. I know, I said gently. She exhaled slowly. I don't remember the last time I felt really seen. And then you show up, and suddenly, I feel like I exist again. I took a slow step forward. You do? Her eyes met mine, a little glossy now. "Don't say that unless you mean it." "I mean it." Then she reached up, fingers trembling just slightly, and pulled me toward her. We kissed, soft, hesitant, tender. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't reckless. It was everything we'd been dancing around, finally letting itself out. One long, quiet moment that spoke louder than anything we'd said all week. She leaned back, reached out, and closed the door behind me. So I did the same, closed the rest of the world out. The night moved in slow motion. Soft hands. Whispered questions. Long silences filled with nerves and want, and something dangerously close to real emotion. Lying there in the dark, I whispered, "What are we even doing?" She answered just as quietly, "Something we might regret." I looked at her. "But not tonight." She shook her head. "No, not tonight." When morning came, I was up before the sun. I slipped out of her room carefully, making sure Jake didn't catch anything. He was still dead asleep. I walked for a while. No direction, just trying to settle whatever was burning in my chest. The world felt heavier, but sharper too. Like everything mattered more. When I got back, she was flipping pancakes like it was any other morning. "Morning," she said with that same calm smile. "Morning." Right behind me, Jake walked in and gave me a pat on the back. "Hope you slept good. Mom's pancakes are the real deal." I sat down as Jake, placed a plate in front of me, smiling just like she had on the first night. Only now, I knew the difference. Now it wasn't just a smile. It was a secret. Friday morning moved by slow. Jake was bouncing around, throwing clothes into a backpack. He'd mentioned a weekend trip earlier in the week, some guys' getaway down in Tampa. I hadn't thought much about it at the time. Now, every second of him packing felt heavier than it should have. "You sure you don't want to tag along?" he asked, stuffing his sneakers in. "Plenty of room. You could edit poolside, man." I shook my head. "Nah. I've got a project due Monday." I lied. "Fair enough," he said, zipping up the bag. "Just don't burn the place down while I'm gone," he joked. He left a little after noon. Linda was still upstairs when he hollered his goodbye. She didn't come down. The front door clicked shut. Then silence. Not long after, I heard footsteps on the stairs, steady, unhurried. I looked up from the couch. She came into view wearing a loose pair of jeans and a soft, faded tank top, laundry basket tucked in her arms, like it was just another chore-filled day. But it wasn't. "He's out?" she asked, eyes fixed ahead, not at me. "Yeah," I said. She gave a slight nod and moved past the living room without stopping, disappearing into the hallway. A minute later, I heard the kitchen faucet running. I followed the sound. She was at the sink, rinsing a bowl of strawberries. "What one?" she asked, glancing sideways. I stepped in a little closer. "Do you?" She didn't answer right away. Just shut off the water, set the bowl down, and turned toward me. The air between us had shifted, no more light teasing. It felt heavier now, full of something neither of us wanted to name. "I didn't sleep much last night," she said, voice soft. "Me neither." She dried her hands, leaned against the counter behind her. "Are we making a mistake?" I asked. "Probably," she said, barely pausing. "But I'm not ready to stop." I walked toward her slowly, deliberately. She didn't back away. When I was close enough to feel her breath, she looked up. "We've only got 2 days," she whispered. And that was all it took. The afternoon melted away indoors, like two people trying to make time stand still. No pretending, no guilt, not yet, anyway. She cooked. I helped. We shared dumb jokes over a cutting board. And then, in the middle of it all, we kissed, slow at first, like we were still testing if it was real. Then deeper, like we'd been holding it in for far too long. By evening, we were curled on the couch watching some movie neither of us was really watching. Her legs rested over mine, her head on my chest. Every now and then, she'd look up at me and smile. Nothing said, just understood. She didn't invite me to her bed that night. She didn't have to. The house was quiet. No music, no whispers, just the gentle press of skin, the shared rhythm of our breathing, and a silence that somehow said everything. We talked in low voices about her life, mine, how something could feel so right while being so wrong. "I haven't felt like a woman in a long time," she said softly. I didn't have some perfect reply, so I just held her a little closer. The next morning felt unreal, like waking up inside a memory. We ate breakfast out on the porch. She was wearing one of my shirts, oversized, only buttoned halfway. Anyone passing by wouldn't think twice. You'd never guess what we'd become. Later, we ran errands. Just simple stuff, groceries, a few things from the hardware store. And it all felt oddly normal. But behind every glance in the cereal aisle or laugh in the car, there was that same quiet spark. Like we both knew this moment wouldn't last, but we were still going to live inside it anyway. Back at the house, she played old songs from her college days. We danced in the kitchen, bare feet sliding across the floor. We laughed like nothing about this was complicated. She pulled out old photo albums, showed me pictures of herself younger, Jake as a baby with food on his face and wild hair. Then she got quiet. "You look sad," I said. "I'm not," she replied. "Just aware." "Of what?" "That this has an end," she said softly. I nodded barely. "I know." She reached up, let her fingers brush along my cheek. "But I wish it didn't." That evening, we sat out back under a string of lights Jake had hung up last summer. The air was warm, soft. She rested her head on my shoulder. "Tell me about when you were a kid." So I did. I talked for a while, not holding back. And she listened, really listened, the kind of listening that makes you feel known. Around midnight, she whispered, "If things had been different." I nodded slowly. "I know." Then Sunday rolled around, and it hit us both like a weight. Jake texted around 9, said he and the guys would be back by late afternoon. We both stared at the screen like it had delivered bad news. Neither of us said a word. Then she stood from the table. "We should probably get the place together." So we cleaned. No music this time. Just quiet. She did laundry. I vacuumed. Sometimes we crossed paths in the hallway. A look here, the brush of a hand there, but no kisses. No more whispered truths. We both felt the clock winding down. Before Jake made it home, I packed my bag. Told him I had found a short-term rental off a listing site. Not a complete lie. "You sure?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Figured it was time to stop crashing at your mom's." He laughed. "Honestly, I think she liked having you around." I didn't say anything, just nodded. Right before I left, she found me near the front door. Jake was upstairs grabbing something. She stepped close. "This isn't goodbye," she said quietly. "Sure feels like it." I saw her throat tighten, her eyes shift just slightly. "You're a good man, Miles." And in that moment, all I wanted to do was kiss her. I should have said something, held her, found the right words to wrap everything up with a neat little bow. But I didn't. All I did was nod. "Thank you," I said, voice low. "For everything." She didn't smile. Just looked at me with those eyes I already knew I'd never forget. Then Jake came stomping down the stairs, and whatever moment we were in, gone. 3 weeks drifted by after I left their place. Time felt like it moved slower. I ended up renting a room in a shared house. not far from their neighborhood. Wasn't intentional, just worked out that way. Close enough that I'd sometimes pass their street while out running errands, or trying to clear my head. I hadn't seen Linda since that quiet goodbye in the hallway. No texts. No calls. Nothing. I didn't expect her to reach out. Truth was, I didn't even know what I'd say if she did. So I drowned myself in work, editing videos from early morning until well past dark, hoping the noise would drown out her voice in my head. It didn't. Everything reminded me of her. A song in a coffee shop. The smell of strawberries. A chipped mug that looked just like the one she used each morning. Then one night, I got a text from Jake. "Hey man, my mom said you left your charger here. Want to come grab it?" I stared at the message longer than I should have. Thing is, I didn't remember leaving a charger behind. Maybe I hadn't. Maybe she just needed a reason. "Yeah, I can swing by tomorrow," I replied. "Cool. I've got class till 2. She'll be home." Of course she would. The next day, I stood outside their front door, heart beating way too fast. Felt like I was stepping back into something I hadn't finished living. I knocked. Linda answered. For a second, she looked surprised. Then she settled, calm, composed. "Hey," she said. "Come in." I stepped inside. Everything looked the same. Even smelled the same. Like time had decided to hold its breath. She walked ahead and grabbed a charger off the kitchen counter. "This the one?" I nodded. The quiet between us said everything we hadn't said before. "How've you been?" she asked. "All right," I said. "Keeping busy." "Yeah," she said with a faint smile. Jake mentioned. "And you?" I asked. "I've been okay." There was a pause. A long one. I glanced down at the charger in her hand. "So is this really here? Or—" She met my eyes. "I didn't want it to end like that." I let out a slow breath. "Yeah, me neither." We stood there, not moving, not speaking, just letting the weight settle between us. Then she said quietly, "I've been thinking about everything. About those days." I looked at her. "Do you regret it?" She didn't answer right away. Then, in a breath, "I regret how much I want to do it again." That hit harder than I expected. "But we can't," she added, steady now. "Not really." I nodded. "I know. It was never supposed to last," she said. "We were just two people who needed something at the same time." "Maybe," I said. "But I don't think that's all it was." Her face softened, just slightly. "No," she said, "but it has to be enough." I stepped in, just a little. "So this is really it?" She gave a sad little smile. "Yeah, it is." I reached into my pocket, fingers brushing a folded piece of paper. "I wrote something for you," I said, "but I think I'll keep it." And then she surprised me, not with a kiss, with a hug. A real one. The kind that wraps around you and somehow says, "Thanks for seeing me." I held her close. "I hope you find someone who makes you feel the way you deserve to feel," I said. She pulled back, her eyes a little glassy. "You made me feel that," she whispered. "Even if it was just for a little while." I nodded once. "Goodbye, Linda." "Goodbye, Miles." I turned and opened the front door, pausing just once to glance back. She stood beneath the kitchen light, arms wrapped around herself, like she was trying to hold everything together. I didn't say another word. Just stepped outside and gently pulled the door shut behind me. And that was that. That night, I lay in my new place, just me and the ceiling. No dramatic goodbye. No chasing anyone through the rain. No final kiss. Just a quiet ending. A connection that wasn't built to stay. A memory I knew would stick longer than it probably should. But maybe that's the thing. Some stories aren't meant to continue. And maybe that's what makes them last. Goodbye.